Let's talk Star Wars. This is not a lightsaber, obviously it's a box, but power of AI.
Hey there friends, happy Star Wars Day. I thought I would love to share the remainder of May the 4th with you and just maybe reminisce a little bit about my Star Wars experience and exposure, how I got introduced to this magical galaxy and how the galaxy has changed over the years from my experience. Maybe we'll walk down the road, like a road of reminiscence together, and maybe your experiences were similar to mine, or maybe we had totally different experiences. But I just thought I'd share a bit of like a talk slash podcasty kind of vibe, and I'll throw in some AI generated cool Star Wars spaceship shit that I made along the way. And let's begin, my friends. So, how did you I'd love to know how you got started off into Star Wars. Like, what was your first exposure? If you were a typical millennial, starting up in the 90s, then I'd hazard a guess that your exposure to Star Wars was probably through like a VHS or a DVD or maybe a TV special, something like that. I had a very different experience, a very rare experience. And I'm eternally grateful to my mom for introducing me to this particular experience. I hope that we're still recording audio, but I'm just gonna keep going. This experience, basically, I saw the OG Star Wars in cinema. It was for like the 10th or 15th anniversary or something like that. It was something like that. And it was a one-off, as far as I could remember, it was a one-off screening of the original trilogy. Remember, there wasn't the sequel trilogy just yet. That hadn't even come out yet. But it was an original one night or one day only. Again, I think, I could be wrong. Maybe it was out for a couple of months. But it was a remastered version as well. I didn't know if it was remastered. I just knew it was a thing called Star Wars. I didn't even know what Star Wars was. My mom just said, come to the cinemas, and we went. I think this was a 97 or 98, 99 kind of screening. And I didn't know anything. And, just imagine your very first experience of Star Wars, A New Hope. And, for you, I'm sure that must have been a significant memory. Because you can't beat world building, character, like all the different characters, the plot that occurred, the adventure, the comedy, the excitement, the thrills, the chills. You can't beat substance like that. All of those things were jam-packed into that one special movie. Like all the different special effects, the sounds, the lightsabers, the Death Star, all the different robots. It's just everything about that film is just spectacular. It can't be beaten, and that's why it's etched into pop culture and memories of millions of human lives all over the world. So imagine that, but in a cinema screen, and you'll know how I felt. I was enthralled. It was seriously an amazing time. And then now, imagine you're now stuck with the cliffhanger of what happens next. So it turns out that as a part of this anniversary special or whatever, every single month, then it was the new, the next movie. So obviously the following month, it was my favorite movie, the Empire Strikes Back. I'm getting chills now just thinking of it. There was something special about that battle on Hoth, the snow planet. All the different those mechanical things. I think they're AT-ATs. Forgive me if I get all the wording wrong. I'm not like a super hardcore fanboy here. I'm just throwing out my genuine yeah, my love for the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. We'll get to the most recent trilogy later, but seriously, seeing that ice battle was again just amazing. You know, the whole "I'm the father" twist of Darth Vader. Seeing Luke lose his hand, and then probably another like massive thing is obviously you get your cliffhanger at the end of the film. So, you know, like some people they're very lucky. They just and it might not necessarily just be Star Wars. It could be anything, but you know, you get the you lose out nowadays on like the oh my god, I have to wait a whole month for the conclusion of this cliffhanger and conclusion of this trilogy feeling. And just because nowadays everything is just so like quick and easily accessible. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back was a very special film. And then finally we get Return of the Jedi, and you know, everything to do with Jabba, Boba Fett. Off the top of my head, I'm just remembering all this stuff. You know, I haven't seen all these movies in ages now. You know, seeing good triumph over evil, Darth's death, Emperor Palpatine, all the little Ewoks, and like the forest battle, and you know, seeing all the different like Wookiees, just all that amazing stuff. Honestly, it was just incredible. I mean, I totally forgot about Yoda as well in Empire Strikes Back. But it was just a brilliant trilogy. Honestly, it was. And so imagine growing up in that time. You know, you're not even 10 probably, and you're just enthralled in this mystery that is Star Wars. And then, obviously, as PC gaming tech, all that stuff started getting better, and so now all of a sudden you have access to you know, the games of the time. I remember going to an arcade and playing like a very basic 3D arcade, and when I say 3D, I mean like literally just wire mesh, like arcade game where you were like one of the rogue squadron and you were busy flying around in this like 3D landscape trying to like destroy TIE fighters and then like blow up the Death Star. And I could never win the damn game, but every single time, like before I'd go to a movie, I'd always be taken to the arcade. And of the 2 games that I played, that was always one of the major games that I played. And, you know, imagine then you grow up a little bit, not for too long, you know, like maybe 2 or 3 years later, all of a sudden you find out that there's this sequel trilogy. And then Phantom Menace. Like, you're literally just the right age to still be, still allow yourself the possibility of like childish escapism. So Phantom Menace comes out. I don't particularly remember, you know, like saying, oh my god, this is incredible. You know, I just remembered like, hey, this was a Star Wars film, and I watched the Star Wars film. And I definitely didn't feel disappointed. But I think that's also because I was at the right age to appreciate the whole Jar Jar Binks and Qui-Gon Jinn, you know, the little Anakin and all that, like all the kiddie stuff that was the Phantom Menace. What I fucking loved was Darth Maul. Such a small little character at the time, but the menace, like the menacing atmosphere that and like demonic atmosphere, it was just so dark. I just loved it. And of course, how could you forget the double lightsaber? Just that when you get to see that like extra lightsaber like come out, and then you know that Ben Kenobi and Qui-Gon are like in for a fight, and then he's like doing all the flips and the spins and the kicks and all that stuff. And yeah, I remember that movie fondly, just because like it was what it was. And then following from that, I remember buying the PC game version of Phantom Menace, and I only ever got up to Tatooine, because that game was damn difficult. Like, you just die all the time, and there were 0 health packs. I didn't play any of the other Star Wars games. I've been like only nowadays I've been watching like long plays of those games, just so I can like kind of get that check off of my digital bucket list, you know. And it's definitely one thing that I do want to do, is to be able to like go through each era of Star Wars and then check out the video games that were associated with them, just because, you know, I really like that kind of stuff, and sometimes you find a whole bunch of hidden gems along the way. And but yeah, like I do remember the Star Wars pod racing game. I never played it, but I do remember a couple of friends at the time had it at their houses. Off the cuff of my head, I can't remember anything else from the Phantom Menace era. I do remember, if we just dialed it back a bit, and I'll put a picture over here as well, an Emperor Strikes Back handheld, like, battery operated game that a friend at the time had, and it belonged to his brother. But every time I'd go there for like play, like you know, boys playing around and shit, that game was always like the centerpiece, or like one of the pieces to like the adventure that we'd planned in our heads. You know how kids played back in the day, millennial kids. You know, I don't know if you older generation, if you're hearing this, or rather let me say the kids nowadays, if you're hearing this, if you understand the concept of just using your imagination just to play, because now it's all about phones and shit. Yeah, it was a different time, you know. I suppose every single human being at some stage will always be saying that. That's what happens with age and perspective. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing that LCD. It wasn't LCD. It was that handheld battery operated game, to the point where my friend was actually like, he kind of, excommunicated me for like a day or two, just because I was so obsessed with that game. And the game itself was quite average. It was more, I mean, yes, it had its challenge to it, and it was awesome, that feeling of mastery and accomplishment when I finally like was able to get good at it. But it was more just, it was a Star Wars thing. So yeah, that's let's move ahead. Attack of the Clones. I don't particularly enjoy, because now I was a teenager, right? I'd seen quite a few good movies at this point. And you know what? Like, I just didn't enjoy it. There was something, I suppose you could say, like, jarring about it. Now having to acclimatize to this new Anakin, when as a boy, more or less the same age as the young Anakin, I was like, cool, I want to see like that Anakin grow up. You know, kind of like the feeling of watching the Harry Potter at the time. You know, like you're more or less the same age, and every year as you grew up, you see the Harry and the, you know, like his friends growing up. Like, that was cool. It was like relatable. And yeah, there's something off-putting about like all the CG Yoda and the battles and Count Dooku. I never really understood that shit. I still don't to this day. And I think Attack of the Clones was like the biggest turning point for the franchise as a whole. Because obviously you had the, sorry if I butcher his name, the Genndy Tartakovsky, the guy who did Dexter's Lab. You know who I'm talking about if you're a super hardcore fan. But you had his animated version of Attack of the Clones, and you know, like that small side story, and then that morphed into the CG movie that wasn't really related but kind of was, and then that morphed into the shows, the animated shows that are still ongoing today in some way, shape or form. And we didn't get that. Everywhere else, you know, like South Africa is always a little bit behind as it goes, but yeah, we didn't get that, unfortunately. So, you know, all of this awesomeness that apparently exists with like more backstory of what's his face, Darth Maul, and the incredible voice acting from the clips that I've seen nowadays, you know, all the background of like Ashoka. Like, I have no idea who this chick is, but you know, like Annie's Padawan or whatever, some shit. All the incredible like CG work that's gone into all these seasons. I missed it, you know, and it's definitely something that I also want to come back to. But at this point, you know, like there's just so much Star Wars. It's like an elephant, you know. You really have to take your time with it. Amidst all the other different pop culture things that, you know, like if you want to be a fan of that stuff, there's so much, and there's only so much that you're willing to take on at the moment. But anyways, you know, all in its right time and place, and so eventually I'll come around to that. But that was Attack of the Clones. You know, it definitely felt more like franchise building, but not necessarily individual story building. And then we get to Revenge of the Sith, which I do remember enjoying. Even though I'd probably say like the last like quarter of the film, to be honest, because everything else was just leading up towards Anakin's downfall and transition into Darth Vader, and that was just awesome. I remember, you know, you hear like all those pneumatic tubes when he's putting on the suit, and you know that little frequency that like slowly started tuning upwards until like you hear the Darth Vader breathing that we're used to from the original trilogy, and then you hear that first and it's like, yes, the Darth has returned. And then that's, you know, that classic cliche no as well, you know, like, where are my kids, they died, or something like that. But you know, that no, as cliche as it was just like it was so perfect for the like the end of that trilogy. And yeah, I'm looking at Wikipedia now, and you know, that movie came out in 2005. Force Awakens was only in 2015. You know, that's quite a gap of time. So where do I... Now, I think my memories of Star Wars then, in between, I think it was more just like, yeah, Star Wars is a thing. More like, yeah, Star Wars, I like Star Wars. More just like, I love, rather than, you know, I love Star Wars. So obviously I'd been exposed to so many more different things at that point. I remember the games, Star Wars Battlefront, the Battlefront games. I remember that they were big, but I never had a PlayStation 2 at the time, or friends to play it with. And when like every now and again I would find somebody who did have a Battlefront game, they would just like destroy me because I had no idea what was going on. So Battlefront 2, yeah, the Battlefront games. I remember that was the big thing. I remember the real-time strategy game was also like really hyped about and talked about. I remember Star Wars. What was the BioWare game? You guys know the one that I'm talking about, hey? KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic. Yeah, so I remember that those were huge and everybody was playing that at the time, but you know, I was always in the position where I never had the hardware to like play any of these games. So, you know, I lost out. But don't worry, don't you fear, I will catch up at some point. Because that was BioWare in its prime. What else, guys? What else? You know, if anything comes to me, I'll come back to the story. But let's jump forward to the sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens. Now, I was ecstatic about this movie. Just, you know, like with JJ coming out of, I think, one or two at this point, Star Trek films. Star Trek, maybe we'll have a different chat about that at some point. I've got a lot to add in the Star Trek department. But like coming out of those two JJ films, also having watched Lost, I was just a big fan of JJ, and then hearing that we have the original cast back, yeah, it was cool. Let's put it this way, friends. I enjoyed the movie, The Force Awakens. It had the cool factor that I really liked. It tied up some things from the sequel trilogy. I liked the idea of Rey. I liked the idea of Finn. Poe, he was the fighter pilot, right? Like, I didn't really get, to be honest. Whoever, I don't know if it's Finn or Poe, the names, right? But whoever the fighter pilot was, yeah, it was kind of like, just like, yeah, he was there. I like the idea of Adam Driver. I can't remember his name in the film, but I like that he was like the Darth Vader guy, and he had the mask, and you know, the anger and the red lightsaber, and I liked all that. It was just like a fun callback to Star Wars. And then obviously there was the Death Star, but bigger kind of plot line as well. And I was just like, okay, you know, I'm not necessarily looking for something stupidly groundbreaking. You gave me what I wanted. You gave me like Han Solo and his swashbuckling, like that little scene. You gave me the mystery of where is Luke Skywalker. You gave me like a, this is the new cute version of R2-D2 kind of scenario. I think C-3PO was in it. I can't really recall. But I had a good time with The Force Awakens. And then it all goes downhill from there, friends. What was it The Last Jedi straight afterwards, or was it Rogue One? Let me just have a look-see. Yeah, then it was the Rogue One straight afterwards. My first thought towards a Rogue One was, this is very quick. Star Wars should... I always thought of Star Wars was like, this is a lot of money, a lot of production, and a lot of time and effort going into something with the purpose of it being memorable. And, you know, all of a sudden, a year later, we have another Star Wars movie. And I remember watching it, and I just felt like something was off. Yes, it was fun, and the budget was off the charts, and all the explosions, and it was cool to see the AT-AT thing, but now on the beach. And what was missing was, it was a bit of an inconsequential story, because it was just a filler, and everybody died at the end. You know, I want my heroes to come out of it alive. So, you know, like, everybody has mixed opinions on Rogue One, but that's my opinion. And I haven't really watched it since. You know, The Force Awakens I've watched every now and again, but all these movies onwards, I haven't really watched, even though I know that in some cases I might enjoy it, but in some other cases I know that I'd absolutely be pissed off by the process of watching it. Next up we have The Last Jedi. And friends, this is the movie that broke me. Too many plot holes. The weirdest... Yeah, just the weirdest plot in general. Like, a spaceship trying to outrun the bad spaceship with side quests in between. And then we had, like, Luke Skywalker. That characterization of old man Luke was just horrible. Like, everybody obviously can refer to like the green cow milk nipple thing, but that was a standout moment. It's like, this is really the character that I've looked up to from my childhood for so many years. And yes, some other people might take like the avant-garde approach of, oh no, this is something different, you know, that's what makes it cool, that it was something that you weren't expecting. And I hear that argument, and at the same time I'd say, you know what, I'd rather have the rug pulled out from under me with another franchise that I don't really care all that much about. Star Wars is special for a reason. Maybe I'm being very selfish here about saying that, but I mean, for real guys, it really is special. And just seeing Luke Skywalker become this crusty old man, and yeah, it was disappointing, man. And then obviously he dies at the end, and that fight scene was also just like weird. You know, it just didn't feel like this was my boy going, you know, like properly. Then we also had Leia. I think this was her first appearance or second appearance. See, I can't remember. If it was a second appearance, then okay, cool. It was a second appearance. So now she's a general, and she has force powers all of a sudden. And that was also like, what the fuck? What's going on here? You know, like, she never did. I don't know if like in the side stories or comic books or something like that it was mentioned. I don't follow that stuff. I just think of the Leia that I know, and that's kind of what I wanted to see, just like more of like an older, wiser version. Next we had the Han Solo movie, and that was a Han Solo movie. That's all I have to say about that one. I remember the explosion where like he got lifted into the air and it was snowy and muddy. I remember that was cool, the special effects for that, and like the ropes and pulling and all that shit. But other than that, I don't really remember the film all that well. I think they try to pack a lot of different Han Solo things into one film instead of just making... Well, at this point, you know what, I can't even complain, because Disney and Star Wars and all the writing team and the production team, they were just doing their own thing at this point. So, finally, friends, we get to the rise of Skywalker. This is a film that I have not watched. I have no clue what this film looks like visually. I do, however, know the plot. And I'm very, very glad that I didn't watch this film. Coming from so much like disillusionment now with the Star Wars franchise, I waited for my YouTubers to go see it. And after the comments, the scathing reviews. But again, you know, like minds attract kind of story. So, you know, the guys who I respected their opinions after their scathing reviews of the film, then I checked myself out. I was just like, you know what? I cherish the memory, the childhood boy days of Star Wars so much that I don't want to tarnish my love for this franchise by watching this film. And yeah, I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker, friends. But from what I've heard, it's a pity. And obviously now, apparently they're talking about making another Rey trilogy. Now, I didn't really have a problem with Rey. I thought I thought she was cool, to be honest. A little bit of like the crazy superpowerness of like, it would have been nice to have seen her go through the training montage kind of scenario. But okay, cool. If she's like this god super being with all the powers, what I don't like is that all of a sudden she seems to think that she is a Skywalker. Like, that's just stupid writing. You know, like, okay, I get it. You're a Palpatine. You come from a pretty bad heritage, but that doesn't mean that you can't change your legacy, especially with the powers and all the responsibility and adventure that you've gone through. Why not just accept the fact that you're a Palpatine? That makes sense. That's pretty good writing, in my opinion. That's awesome characterization and character growth, not just, oh, I'm a Skywalker just because. That doesn't make any sense, guys. Come on, who wrote this stuff? Next up, we have so yeah, we'll see what happens with this Rey trilogy. Who knows what will happen, to be honest, because Disney now versus Disney back then are very different beasts. Cool. Let's talk the live action Disney Plus shows. I've only seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi one. Very disappointed. I liked very few things about it. The fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan, both in the Darth Vader suit and just an Anakin Jedi whatever clothing. But yeah, it was Disney disappointment, Disney live action disappointment. I haven't seen Mandalorian or any of the other shows associated. I haven't seen the anime stuff. But yeah, guys, Star Wars is different now. The people who write it are different. The production and the ideology behind Star Wars is different. It's a pity. But hey, sometimes we can't get what we want and we can't maintain that childlike illusionment. But you know what? If they somehow manage to bring that back, that would be so cool. I remember the games, the Lego Star Wars games. I never played them, but I also remember that was like a thing. That was cool back in the day. I remember there was a Star Wars, like lots of like cereal, like inserts, like Star Wars toys and cereals. I remember Star Wars Happy Meal things, I think, if I recall correctly. But other than that, guys, that is my Star Wars chat. I hope that you enjoyed. And I really, really respect you genuinely if you managed to listen through all of this, because, who would be willing to give the time of day to a new YouTuber and just let him rant for pretty much for half an hour about Star Wars. So, you know, if we've connected over a couple of things here, then please do comment, chat. You know, let's have a conversation about it. If we connected about similar things, and yeah, I just want to say, you know, if you listen to this whole thing, just thank you. I really appreciate it. So I hope that you enjoyed it and that you were entertained and that you were able to walk down memory lane a little bit as well. I'd love to hear your side of the story as well, you know, if we have similar interests. But until then, my friend, I suppose let me get back to my edit, and may the 4th be with you, wherever you are in the world. Take care.